AI is going to change everything. It used to be that everyone went to Google. If you were ranking really well on Google, then you got business. It's not necessarily all about Google or about social. It might be language models, it might be Reddit. And so what we're doing is being totally platform agnostic and really dialing into what their outcomes are, where their target market is, and speak to their target market when they want to be spoken to, how they want to be spoken to, and where they want to be spoken to.
Richard Conway, a digital marketing expert, founded Pure SEO with just $200. He turned it into a multi-million-dollar business. He's a leader in digital marketing and AI, even meeting Richard Branson.
Whether somebody will pay you like $10,000 or something.
It's unusual for someone of that wealth and that success to have people come and just spend a week with them on their island.
How do you find leading your company now?
We're about 70, 80 people at the moment. We have been bigger. But it's about finding good people. I often go in and look around all these people doing stuff and I think, wow, I can't believe this happened. I remember being on my own, sitting on the corner of someone's desk. And so it's quite surreal.
How did you afford them?
Couldn't really afford them. It just meant I earned nothing. Really, to start, I had to go out and make sales.
How did you get comfortable with getting no's?
I'm an optimist. In 2012, my wife got cancer, and in the same week, my main employee handed in his notice. That was one of those moments where I could have chucked in the towel.
Quick one, Mina here. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. One thing that you can do for me is to please hit the subscribe button below. A lot of people who come and watch this podcast or listen to the podcast are not subscribers. And so we're trying to increase our subscriber base. We are wanting to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I promise you that if you hit subscribe, I'm going to work hard to make sure that my episodes are really good, that will get better and better. So, do we have a deal? Okay, back to the episode. Richard, good to have you on the podcast. How are you?
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm good. And how are you?
I'm great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you being here. And yeah, we were just chatting just before, so we might as well just carry on the conversation. And I want to ask you, I want to first start with, we've done an intro about you just now. People might have a bit of an idea of who you are. However, it is always nice to delve a bit deeper and figure out from you, what are some of the earliest experiences of your life that have shaped who you are today?
Yeah, deep question to start. So my dad was a pop singer in the 60s. My mum was from the Czech Republic, probably more academic. And she moved to the UK when she was 18, and my mum and dad got married, and they're still together today. They're very kind of kind people, so I've got a good relationship with them, and they're still together. Getting old though, that's one of the hardest things about moving. The other side of the world is, we have kids, and you don't think the ramifications of that when you move so far from your family. But
how did they influence you as Richard Conway today?
So my mum's always sort of driven the academia, so I was always going to go to university, and she's been very pushy on that side. But on the other side, she's always been someone that says, you can do anything you want. She's always been encouraging and very much, building us up. There's three of us, three brothers. My dad was also very gentle, very kind guy, and much more sort of laid back than mum. Mum's always been quite focused. I'm probably a little bit more like my mum than my dad. And my older brother's probably like dad. But yeah, we're reasonably close family. But growing up, I used to fight with my brother all the time.
Oh, brother. Really?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. How come? Do you just
He used to wind me up. He used to know what button to push, and then I would explode. So till we're about 18, but now we're close now, so it's not.
Yeah, it's different. You founded Pure SEO about 15 years ago. I will let you tell the story because it's amazing. It's inspiring. You can tell there's a lot of grit and determination. When you landed in New Zealand in 2009, what happened?
I did a little bit of work in a commercial property company for a little bit, but I was always looking to start my own thing, and we were in a rare place in our life where we didn't actually have that much to risk, because we had a place in the UK where we just came from, which was rented out. Didn't have any kids. We were renting, I think, somewhere for $350 a week. So we didn't have many expenses. My wife was a social worker, and I've always wanted to start a business. And then there was a few different things I thought about, and this just Pure SEO was just one of those that I thought had legs, and so I thought, have a go.
What were your skills at the time? What were you really good at?
So I'm a dreamer, a thinker, and the other thing is my whole kind of personality is based on trust. And so if I created a business, it was always going to be on that basis that, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, like regardless of what, or if someone phones me, I'm going to phone them back. And so I've also got a little bit of Britishness in me. It's a competitive market. So in some respects, I'm reasonably competitive. In other ways, I'm very uncompetitive. So what are you competitive in and not competitive in? So I'm competitive in that I always want to do better myself. With business, I want to be the biggest, the best that I can be. My wife Emily beat me at squash last night, and some people would care about things like that. I just enjoy the good game, and so it's not about winning or losing, something like that for me. But if I'm really good at something and I really think I can achieve, that's probably when I want to win. But then I never really mind losing, as long as I've done
your best.
My best,
So tell me about, when I was sort of asking about the, what sort of things you were good at when you first moved to New Zealand and you worked for people, what were the skills and expertise that you started your business journey with before starting Pure SEO?
So I've been relatively lucky. I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers and management consultancy services. I was then a venture analyst for a venture capital company. And looked at different businesses. I learned a lot there. And then after that, I went into commercial property and worked with a private fund in the UK. And they were really entrepreneurial, and I learned a lot about entrepreneurship from them. They had multiple businesses. But what we were doing was we're buying commercial property, cash buyers for the fund, and trying to get good deals. And so we were advertising in the Times, Telegraph, Independent, spending about £180,000 a year. I set up Google Ads campaign for them, and we reduced the spend massively and got a much healthier inquiry. And that kind of started me on the path to understanding digital. And then I ran another business for them called Search Office Space, which was an online service office brokerage. And then came to New Zealand not knowing anyone, with Emily, who also didn't know anyone. So it was quite intimidating coming to a country where you haven't really got anything, don't know anyone. And
did you not find that New Zealand is a bit similar to the UK in some respect?
Very similar to the UK. The way, I think Australia is more American, slightly more brash, slightly more in your face, whereas New Zealanders are more reserved. And so it's much easier to assimilate. I have a bunch of people from all around the world that work for me, and especially the Indians find it hard to get jobs because culturally it's quite different. And some of these people are some of the most capable people that I employed, but they really struggled at the beginning because of language barriers and because of the lack of New Zealand recognising qualifications from places like India. So coming from England, it's easy. Easy.
Yeah. So when you start, let's go back now to starting Pure SEO. You talked about having like $200 in your pocket to start it. Why did you have that? Why? Like, what's going on there?
So what happened was I was a bit silly in that we brought, we had about 20 grand in cash that we had saved for the move. And I kept bringing it backwards and forwards and trying to make money on the Forex thing. But then the pound kept going down and all my money was stuck in the UK. So we didn't really have any money. It wasn't my smartest idea. So I had a budget of $200 to build a page of the website. I cobbled the rest together myself. It kind of looked like a child had built it, but it was enough. I got a guy called John Malloy did my logo for a bottle of Grey Goose vodka, and just started from there. Went out, started meeting people, and yeah.
What was the landing page about? Like, tell me a bit.
So it was the first page of the Pure SEO website, the initial one,
Nice.
and then I built other pages to it. So the services, bog standard, but it wasn't. Yeah, it didn't look pretty, and it. Yeah, I can write, but the design. I'm not a developer. I'm not a technician, so it was a bit of a hack job.
So you pretty much had to start with a one-page website just to get things rolling. To get things rolling. Talk to me about the early days with trying to make Pure SEO work. Like, how was the first year of business?
First year of business was damn hard, right? Because I'm not naturally extroverted, and I was turning up to events and things where I knew nobody. And for me, that's quite tricky. And so I sort of identify the other people that clearly were on their own and chat to them, and that makes it slightly easier. But it was hard because it was about establishing a network, and especially in New Zealand, there's a lot of recommendation marketing and a lot of relationship marketing. And if you haven't got those relationships or that experience, it takes someone to actually give you a chance in order to actually begin. I remember my first client was a company called Creative Embroidery, and I'd have literally given them a massage on the way out. I just wanted to over-service because they'd given me that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I had a business model. I had a model that it was like $50 an hour, 4 hours a month. If I got 50 clients, it'd be 120 grand of revenue. I would keep 60 and employ someone for 60 and rinse and repeat. Now, the model is not so different today, but I realize $50 an hour is a comedic amount, and that 4 hours a month is probably not enough. But the model's almost the same as when I started. One mistake I made in that first year was if I shake hands with someone, that's it. It's as good as a contract as far as I'm concerned. Other people don't necessarily think that way, and I was too inexperienced to ask people to sign contracts. And then I had someone not pay me and disappear and not answer my calls, and so that kind of taught me I should probably be doing contracts. Yes, there were lots of learnings like that in the early years because I didn't know anything about anything. I had no experience, and it has its pros and its cons. Because if you've got no experience, you don't have the same limitations as well. So you'll have a go at everything. But on the other side, it takes longer. You make more mistakes.
What was your perception of business back in the day?
I don't think I thought too deeply about it. I think I just wanted to do good stuff with good people and make a difference with outcomes. And that's how you grow a business. And I think probably my core skill has been delegation. I know where I'm not good and finding people that are good at the bits that I'm not good at. And that's probably the main reason we've been able to scale, because you can't do everything yourself. If you try and do everything yourself, you create a bottleneck and it's just not scalable. But there are compromises with that, and there are lots of learnings. And
you touched a little bit on scalability. I'd love to dive deep more, because in your second year, third year, fourth year, how did you manage get me down into those years? How did you scale further? The first year went well, even though it was really difficult.
Yes, the first year I generated $60,000, so not a huge amount of money.
It's a good effort for a first year.
But it wasn't a huge amount to
employ
cover
somebody.
my expenses and etc. But it was all right.
How did you make it work?
My wife was working as a social worker, and so she was earning a little bit of money. She wasn't earning a lot, because social workers don't, but and she was comfortable with supporting us, which gave me the flexibility to earn less and try and reinvest stuff. So I couldn't have done it without that, really.
I see.
But I always wanted to grow something big. I don't think any other way. So it was never going to be like a one-man band. It was just not the way I think. And then even today, we're sitting at nearly 90% recurring revenue, and that's probably been the best decision. So by that, I mean contracted monthly revenue. So I know however much every month we're going to be billing minimum. And as long as we're signing more than our churning, our business is always growing. And that recurring revenue gives you the ability to make different kinds of decisions, because you're not worrying in December and January when you're going to get any revenue from. You know you've got the revenue, so it gives you surety to employ other people. And I couldn't afford my first person. I couldn't afford my second person. But by getting them, it allowed me to go out and sell more.
How did you get them? How did you afford them?
I couldn't really afford them. It just meant I earned nothing, really.
Yeah.
Just I had to go out and make sales. I had to bring in new business, but it freed me up to be able to do that. I'd created templates for the work, and I trained them up on the templates. I didn't employ particularly high-end people.
Oh, okay. Like mid-range.
Yeah, I just employed people who were able to follow my templates and follow my methodology, while allowing me to go out and bring in new business. And that was, that made a big difference. But then I employed, I think year 3 maybe, a guy called Jay, who's still with me today, who's as my first salesperson. And he showed me my price issues. So I was always like trying to think in my mind, I can't pitch for that. It sounds really expensive when it's all relative, but it was my own issues. And he came in and he started selling at much higher value than I did. And it showed me my own biases that were holding me back.
Interesting. Why do you think you were pricing lower than it should be? Just worried that people are not going to buy it or take it up, or?
Yeah, because at the time I was skint, and it sounded, if someone pays you $500, $600 a month, that sounded a lot to me, $7,000 a year. But yeah, it's, you've got to provide a service for that, and you've got to pay for the service. And I realized after that you could charge more and you could do more. And in fact, if you do get bigger customers with bigger budgets, you're actually able to achieve more. And so it's kind of a win-win. Whereas if you've got the small customers with almost no budget, they want blood really quickly, and you can't necessarily provide that. So it was a good learning experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The first year, the second year. So when were you able to hire your first staff? Year two. But
I was, I love business, and I started another business in the early days, which actually helped Pure in many respects. I started an insurance aggregator, so an insurance comparison site, and I managed to convince a guy called Roger Bell, who was the ex-CEO of Vero and the chairman of the Earthquake Commission, and a guy called Ira Bing, who started the Cullen Fund in New Zealand, to come on as business partners in that. And the Ice House got involved in that. And I learned so much through that process. It cost me a lot of money. But I learned, the learnings and the connections it gave me were foundational in kind of Pure. There was Andy Hamilton was the CEO of the Ice House at the time. And there was a guy, can't remember his name. There's a resident in-house entrepreneur from the US. It will come to me later. Who was brilliant, and I just learned so much. And then I heard people like Tim Alp talk about their journey, and hearing all these stories. Stories is what kind of inspires you, and you learn from. And that experience was amazing. Ultimately, insurance companies colluded to stop it happening. I don't know if I should say that on here. And I got invited on Fair Go to have a row with them, but I kind of figured it wasn't my time to have a row. I had a child on the way. I think I had 4 staff at Pure SEO. And yeah, insurance companies have got flaws of lawyers. And so I didn't feel I was in the right place back then to fight. I probably would now. And I still think it needs to happen, but there's so few insurers.
So what really happened?
So I tried to make the aggregator, but ultimately there's basically 4 insurers, and IAG have got a big percentage of the market, especially after they bought AMI. And so you had to get at least 1 or 2 of the big insurers, although they have multiple brands, to come onto the platform in order to make a consumer-friendly aggregator. But their issue is internationally, it's commoditized insurance, and it's reduced margins and reduced price, and it's a price-based thing. So it was a great learning experience. I got to spend 2 hours on Skype with a guy called Chuck Wallace, who started Esurance, which he sold for $1 billion. That was through the Ice House. And things like that taught me that you can access these people, and they're just people. They'll give you their time, and not to kind of put them on a pedestal, because they are just people. They're just good at one particular thing. And I met a lot of cool people.
I love how you say that, not to put people on a pedestal, because it's so easy to like you're here and they're here because whatever, for whatever reason, like they've accomplished so much in their life, or have got this or that. For people who are listening, I mean, I'm sure people who listen or watch either have made millions or have made thousands. For those who have made thousands, what do you say? How can they approach the experience? How can they, like, what's the mindset? What's going on in their mind that they're able to confidently approach people and chat to people, and especially if they're introverts, which can be a little bit more tricky. What are some of the pearls of wisdom that you've had throughout the years that you can help them to?
So you're going to get no's, right? You've got to be comfortable with getting no's. You've got to be comfortable with being rejected. But
how did you get comfortable with getting no's?
I'm an optimist, so like you get no, it knocks you down, but 5 minutes later you've forgotten about that, and you just kind of look at the next thing. So it's probably innate in my personality.
It doesn't weigh you down.
No, it doesn't. Like the things that weigh me down is if I feel like someone has been unethical or they've done something to breach my trust, because trust is that core thing. That's like difficult, but eventually I get over that and I kind of move on. But that's much harder because it's more existential to me. But no, like in the grand scheme of things, like you're in the same position you were before. There's no actual downside, but you find like. So there's a guy called Ram Fishkin, who's probably the most well-known in our industry. And I wrote a book about SEO for Penguin Random House, and I reached out to him through LinkedIn, and he wrote a chapter in my book for me. And this is the most well-known person in my industry. It's like the Whiteboard Friday. So, and funnily enough, when we started this whole AI journey, it was him I reached out to find the best person in the world in AI and digital marketing. And he introduced me to Lady Brittany, who came and worked for us for a year as a contractor to help us with our strategy as we evolve the business.
Nice way to segue into that, actually, because your company is developing, growing, changing by the second. So you have to keep up.
Yeah, you do. Like, and it's hard. The bigger you grow, the more people you have, the more customers you have, you become less agile. If you're a 5 or 6 person company, you can decide to do something and do it the next day. But we're not. And so things have a little bit of inertia. They take a little bit of time to actually roll out. And I want everything done yesterday because I'm a million miles an hour anyway, the way I think. And so I have to temper that. But in some respects, it's my job. I never stop thinking. I never stop reading. I never stop. Not because I perceive it as work, just because it's what I do. It's like, it's of interest to me. So,
what did you learn from that lady that you hired for a whole year about AI? What do you think is really changing?
It is going to change everything. Like in my mind, there's no doubt, but understanding what is capable of and what it's not capable of at the moment. And it's not like a panacea. It's not like the answer to everything. It's good to augment things. You're still going to need humans, and I think that EQ is really important. But one thing that Brittany talked about was, large language models can be really smart, but they can also be really stupid. And she gave an example of an app in the US that was designed to identify skin cancers, and the results of the app kept coming out wrong, and the AI large language model behind it had bringing out the wrong results, and they didn't understand it. And eventually they worked out that from the sample data that was put in, the skin cancers had a ruler next to them measuring them. And so the large language model had learned that if it's skin cancer, it's got a ruler next to it. And so it's not got that common sense. And so while it's very smart, it's also very stupid, if you understand what I mean.
How do you think your business is going to change with the advent of AI already in place?
So we're already well underway. We employed a chief AI officer over a year ago. We've implemented walled bots trained on our own data internally to do lots of things, a bit of automation and things like that, learn how to optimize for large language models. But I see this as, we're at the inception really of a big upwards trajectory. So it's going to change everything. And we have to be agile and adopt things as and when. The other side of it is I don't want to risk things, and so I would never get AI to verbatim write content for us or our clients, because I think that's a race to the bottom. What I do think at the moment AI is good for is ideation and research and putting things together and just sort of speeding up things. But the real magic in content comes from anecdotes, experience and storytelling. And I don't think AI is there. And one of the things I fear most is that a lot of people use AI content and AI starts to be trained on AI content. And that's not good for humanity. And then also AI is being trained on things like Reddit, which, a lot of that stuff's the lowest common denominator. And people say things that they wouldn't necessarily say in real life because they can be anonymous. And I don't know if that's a future that sounds that good. On the other side, Elon Musk this week got FDA approval for something related to curing blindness for people like that that have never been able to see. And he described it as, the first sort of version will be like really sort of pixelated and very basic vision, but eventually it will be better eyesight than you or me have. It's quite incredible to think.
So what is it about? Tell me more.
Well, that's pretty much all I know is that I was just reading an article on it. I presume it's related to Neuralink. But how amazing would it be to be able to give people eyesight who have never had eyesight? I mean, that's quite an incredible thing. I find like Elon Musk quite an interesting guy because he's got a lot of detractors and he can act like a child in many respects, but he's one of the few people who've moved the needle on the world. And I think we'll talk about that, putting people on a pedestal. Like no matter how smart and successful and whatever you are, we've all got faults. And like I say, he's like a child in things. Every genius is flawed. And a lot of people focus on those flaws and try and cut them down. Whereas there's very few people who've moved the needle in society like he has. And so I think we need people like that. We need mavericks. We need game changers. Like he's not supposed to be the nicest person to work for. And he's supposed to be a bit of a tyrant, but sometimes you need people like that to change the world.
How do you find leading your company now? Like when it comes to, firstly, how big is it right now? Like how happy are you with it?
Yeah, like it's a constant evolution. There are ups and downs. We're about 70, 80 people at the moment. We have been bigger, been over 100, I think, at some point. Like it's about finding good people. I often go in and look around all these people doing stuff and I think, wow, I can't believe this happened. I remember being on my own, sitting on the corner of someone's desk. And so it's quite surreal. But I always wanted to grow something big. And I don't do those business plans and things like that. I'm very much gut related. And it's, you do something every day to further what you're trying to achieve. That's how big stuff happens. They don't happen overnight. They're slog. And I've had quite a few challenges over the years. So in 2012, my wife got cancer, and the same week, my main employee handed in his notice, and that was one of those moments where I could have chucked in the towel. And I felt like it, but I had clients that relied on me, and there's that trust. And
what was it like for you?
It was hard. I had to phone Emily's mum and tell her that her daughter's got cancer, and we had one child, and with no other family here, and so it was hard. But in the first year of Pure SEO, we had 3 miscarriages as well before we had Ethan. So you don't really think about stuff like that, especially being an optimist. You don't, that's not how you see the world. And so when things happen, it's a bit jarring. But the trust and doing the right thing kind of motivated me to I had to do stuff. Like I couldn't not do the commitments to my clients and to the people that work for me. And that's what drove me. If it had been just me, I'm not sure whether I would have done it, but I had others relying on me. And then looking after Emily, and it was an intense period. I wouldn't want to go back there.
You don't want to go back? I
wouldn't want to go back there. No, I wouldn't go back to England either. No, not in a million years.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Obviously, it's been it must be tough having those difficult times, because balancing work and business is difficult. How have you? Is there such thing as balance?
Well, I don't even I never stop thinking. It's just in my nature. I'm always thinking about it, so I don't see it as delineated. But I feel privileged in that. I was at a board meeting, for example, and Emily had to deal with Amber and managed to break her toe. And she phoned me, she didn't know what to do with Amber. She had to go to hospital. And owning your own business, I was in the board meeting and I just said, look, Emily's broken her toe and I've got to go. And so you've got that, you don't have to ask anyone else. You kind of got that autonomy, and that's really good. The other side is I don't stop thinking about it.
You don't stop thinking about work,
business, and what we can do, and just trying to solve problems and grow. But that's kind of the way my mind's built in a way, and it doesn't necessarily feel like work. When it feels like work is when work's really hard, home's really hard, and then kids are playing up. That's when it kind of gets too much.
How do you do it? How do you deal with that?
It's hard sometimes.
If I go into your brain inside there and think about the processes, like how are you managing your decisions, how are you prioritizing, how do you separating things, like what is going on inside, like how is your thinking process?
So I got probably a bit of a messy mind. I got an ADHD kind of mind, and I'm always a million miles an hour. So I've always got lots of things going on in my mind at the same time. But my core skill is ideation and thinking about how things could be, and then finding people to try and implement those things. But when it's hard at home, it's hard with family, and it's hard at work. I need some things to kind of stop my mind, because that was one of my biggest problems, is actually turning my mind off. So we talked about earlier, I do the kickboxing. I also get massages, and those are probably two of the things that, and I sing, random.
Are you good?
It's I'm okay, but it's not for anyone else. It's for me. It's kind of like escapism. So I do things like that, or put on music that changes my kind of mindset. Sometimes it has to be a conscious decision, but other times it's not always easy. And sometimes I really need a break, and so I take a break. What
does your break look like?
We've got either holiday with the family, which is cool. I love exploring places, love traveling, or we've got a place in Ruakaka, which it backs onto Dockland. I've got a hammock in the living room, log fire, steak. Like, to me, that's my happy place. So I do that kind of thing. Or I read a lot.
What do you read?
Everything and anything: business books, psychology, science, fiction, from Jack Reacher to all sorts of things. Like, I read that Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson not that long ago, and then that was written so well. I read the Einstein one as well. That was really good.
Do you believe that up and coming entrepreneurs need to be reading a lot to be successful, and what sort of things they need to be reading to really get good grips on what's going on in their world?
So reading is one way. There's also obviously podcasts and YouTube and stuff like that, which weren't as prevalent when I started my business. But think about it like this: you've got like some of the most successful people in the world, and they're distilling what they've done and how they've done it into a book. And so you're ultimately learning from other people's mistakes and what they've done right. So reading's, I think, absolutely critical, and like this is the stories and things like that. Like, one of the books I read before I started my business was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is it's quite an old book, but it was quite
It's a good book.
influential. I built my mastermind team and things like
Did
that.
you?
Yeah. But yeah, it's lots of little things. Like EO has been one of the most influential things in my business because I've learned so much.
Which is entrepreneurial organization.
Yeah.
Just for people who don't know what that is.
So it's a global organization. I think it was started in the US by Vern Harnish and a couple of others. And basically you meet once a month with a small group and you talk about your top 5% business, family and personal. So you get to know these people really well. And there's the whole thing. No one's allowed to give advice. You've got to use Gestalt language protocol. So you only talk about experience. So if I've, for example, there's one presentation at least a month. If I've got a problem, be it business, personal, etc., I might present that to the group, and then they would give experiences that they've had that I might be able to take something away from. And so that's been pretty foundational for me. And I think there's 16,000 members globally, and some of the events globally have been amazing. I met amazing people, heard amazing speakers, and learned so much, and had lots of fun along the way as well.
We're talking about meeting people. You've met Richard Branson, but not through EO.
Yeah, it was through my EO thing. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay, awesome.
So me and Steve White, who owns Stony Ridge, were the two from New Zealand that went to Necker Island, spent a week with Branson and 25 other entrepreneurs, and it was cool. Yeah.
Did Richard Branson pick you and that other person out of a random, like, how did it work?
So whether it was him or whether
This EPA.
Yeah, so it came out and there was a limited number of places, and it was 2014 I think, and I put my name down. Steve must have put his name down, and we got accepted on it. But it was fun. Like, it was crazy. And I learned more probably from the other entrepreneurs there than I did from Branson. And like one guy had a SaaS company SAP company in the US who was turning over more than $1 billion. One of the ladies there was a dragon on Dragon's Den Island. And so they were really cool people. And because you spend so much time with these people, you get to know them reasonably well. And I was so out of my depth at that time because my business was young, and like, even New Zealand, like, on the grand scheme of things, is small. And so I felt quite out of my depth during that. But I learned, I met some cool people, and I'm still in touch with quite a few of them today. So
what was Richard like?
Yeah, he was interesting individual. Like, it's unusual for someone of that wealth and that success to have people come and just spend a week with them on their island. So that in itself is quite unusual. And you could see when something like sparked his attention, like an idea or something, you could see in his eyes. On the negative side, like, he very rarely looked you in the eyes when he talked to you. It was a really interesting thing. And he gave us a talk about Virgin Galactic, and it was talking about how you could get from Australia to the UK in 2 hours by going out into orbit and coming back down. And then a few weeks later, they did their test flight where it blew up and someone died. So he was very much in a really excited stage when he spoke to us. And it was interesting. But it was odd that he was with us all the time and doing stuff all the time. But he was a really interesting character. It was cool.
There's so much that you've done in your life as well, and I think we can talk for hours, to be honest. I would love to ask you this question: if you would sit down and whether somebody would pay you like $10,000 or something and say, distill for me the rules for business, the biggest and most important things that I need to know to be able to be successful and happy at the same time. Here's $10,000. Tell me what it is. What's the masterclass sort of points?
Yeah, I think that's $1 million question, but I'll have a go at answering it.
I'll give you $1 million.
So understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, and having the ability to put good people around you that you trust, And I think life, like business, is a lot around building trust and storytelling, and expanding your comfort zone. Like, I was terrified to get up on stage when I first started my business, but I just kept doing it. And there's an amazing 5-minute video by a Kiwi entrepreneur, Claudia Batten. It's probably my favorite 5 minutes. If people want to look it up, it's Ignite Boulder, Claudia Batten. And it just distills everything I think about entrepreneurship in a 5-minute video. I think she's amazing entrepreneur. But keep doing things every single day towards your goal. Know it's going to be hard. Try and have a positive outlook. Do good things for good people, and test and iterate. Don't be scared to, if you don't think something's working, to change things. And I think probably the most important thing is the people you surround yourself with, because you can't do everything on your own. And if you surround yourself with people that you can trust implicitly and have complementary skills, kind of the sky's the limit. But on the other side, if you bring the wrong people on, it can be really painful and really obstructive. And I think it helps being an optimist, because,
So you're also before I ask you the second question, I think those points are quite key, because you've got trust, doing something every day, testing things out, and the people. That's what I have in my notes.
Yeah, and storytelling. I think storytelling is also really important.
I actually would love to go into the storytelling, because I wanted to say, well, why do you say storytelling is quite an important part, and that I don't hear business owners talk about that much.
Well, if you think even about like money, right? Money is a form of trust and a story, because money used to be like, pegged to gold and things like that. So it had real value, but nowadays it doesn't actually have real value. It's just that we trust the stories and we trust the banks and things like that, but it's, it hasn't actually got intrinsic value. And I think as humans, we're built on these stories and our own experiences, which are again stories. And there are stories that resonate with people. So like rags to riches, triumph against adversity, David versus Goliath, those kind of themes. And if you think about communication, like, how do you engage someone? You tell them a story. Like, that's what kind of life's about. And through storytelling, you can feel authenticity, you can feel personality, and how do you be different? Like, there's that whole, I don't even know who coined the phrase, zig when everyone else is zagging. If everybody's doing one thing one way, then there's probably an opportunity to do it a different way. It might be the same thing, because how do you stand out? And storytelling is about that standing out. It's been absolutely foundational in Pure SEO's success. And also, like, I sold part of the business 2014 to Tony Falkenstein and Ian Malcolm. And Tony's a very successful entrepreneur in his own right. And Ian is my accountant, he's an accountant. And the business wouldn't be in the shape it is without their expertise and their experience. And I think there's a lot to be said for bringing in people who know more than you and who have been there and done it and running things past. You don't always agree, but even if you don't agree, you've got to respect their opinion, and you walk out as a united front. And the other thing is transparency. Like, don't hide anything from business partners, because if something bad happens, like, they should know about it immediately. They shouldn't find out about it from somebody else. And so I value that transparency above all else. And I say the same to my staff. If something's happened, don't try and hide it or cover it up or fix it yourself. You're never going to be, I've never shouted at anyone in 15 years of being a CEO. I don't raise my voice. I don't get angry at people, because it doesn't achieve anything. And it's, you just start to put people on edge, and then they start to perform worse. Which is the antithesis of what Elon Musk does, but he's massively successful in getting things out of people. But it's kind of it's the people around you and the experience they have that helps you sort of round out your ideas and bounce them off people, because it's quite lonely being a sole CEO and founder. You know, you can't necessarily go to your staff members for support, or because there's different problems and they're not worried about, you know, how to make payroll or something like that. Whereas when you've got experienced people around you, then you can have those conversations.
I know that some people have networking groups, and some people have business groups and entrepreneur friends. Is there a number that is healthy to have? Like, one group with 3 people in it, or like, is that healthy, or is it healthy just to have 1 or 2, 3 groups, or is it unhealthy to have 3 groups of 3 entrepreneurs? You know, surrounding yourself with people is good, but surrounding yourself with too many people can be bad as well. So is it, what's the ideal number that you have had, that you've had success with? Like, and who are the exact people? Are we talking about staff, or talking about advisors or business advisors, or?
So there's, I don't know the definitive answer on that. I think it's much like a friend group. You know, you have a bunch of people you know and who you consider friends, but then you have really close friends and a much smaller group who know you more intimately and who you trust implicitly. Now, the EO format, we've had 7 to 8 people in our little group, and that seems to work really well. They're all different businesses. Personally, I've got a small board. I think there's 5 of us on the board. I have an executive leadership team that I trust implicitly, and that trusting's important for me. But different people for different kinds of things. But I've got like 4 or 5 very close friends who are entrepreneurs who I know I could pick up the phone at any time of the night if I needed to and speak to them. And they just want you to succeed, so they'll always have your back. And I think it's nice having that.
Those kind of people.
Yeah.
You're a business mentor and investor. So you probably have mentored a lot, you know, like hundreds of people by now, and you also invest. And I'd like to get in touch with the mentoring side of things first. How important is it to mentor somebody?
So,
or how important is it mentorship has been in your life as a business owner?
So that's probably more pertinent. So the reason I help other people is, you know, I came to this country knowing nobody, and so many people helped me on my journey. Either get, you know, chat with a coffee, introduce me to someone, or, you know, I've had business mentors. I've currently got 1 at the moment, and like, these people are there. I joined Business Mentors New Zealand early doors to get 2 mentors, and these people, they're giving their time to actually help you, and you can then cherry pick what advice you take or what information you take from that. But again, it's been like foundational for me, and one of the reasons I generally say yes if someone approaches me is because so many people help me, and I think it's an obligation to then help the next generation. And it's also one of the reasons I bought New Zealand Business Magazine, because there's so many. I was good friends with Jake Miller, who obviously killed himself when and you know, everything, and that kid achieved so much in his 24 odd years, and and I think it's really important to help younger entrepreneurs and just give them a bit of a leg up, give them advice, give them a shoulder that they can reach out to, because it is lonely. And I know if I was that age and I'd had that success, I'd probably struggle to handle it, you know. And so I think, like, if you're a bit older and you've been through a few things, it's almost like an obligation to kind of do that. And in some respects, it's fun. I try never to give advice as well, much like the EO thing, because you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's an opinion of one, and I don't know everything. But what I can share is a thought process, and you know, and that person choose whether they take something from that or not.
What about if someone here come in and, like, he's a 30-something-year-old, 20-something-year-old, even 40, they're wanting to start their business and they come to you as a mentor. We did talk about some of the things that you need to have, like trust, having people around you, and people, and storytelling rather. Practical things that someone would need to know to start a business, whether it's in your field, which or could be in any other field, any other startup. Someone wants to start like a practice of some sort. Practical advice right now for them to get going.
All right, so biggest thing is making that decision, actually doing it. Like the old Branson thing, screw it, let's do it. That's probably the biggest barrier, because you psychologically psych yourself out. You have these ideas, and you and then know that it's not all going to be roses. There's going to be hard times, but that's for everybody, and you've got to kind of battle through that. There might be a few tears shed and stuff like that, but there's always people out there you can talk to. The thing that I'm not very good at, but is absolutely critical to a scalable business, is systems and processes. And so the earlier you have that, the better. And also, if you ever go to sell a business, like systems, processes, and having things done in the correct manner makes that whole process a lot easier.
Would you expand on that, just for people who don't know what that means? I mean, I know what it is, but what is a system and a process? So
when I started the business, right, I create these documents, we do Google Analytics reports, and I'd copy and paste tables from analytics, put them in a Word document, PDF them, and send them out. We got to 50 clients, and half that stuff was in my head. And I started forgetting things or missing things, there's human error, copying the wrong things. And so I brought someone in to help, and we spent a lot of money and a lot of time implementing a really good CRM, customer resource management system. And also we developed our own dashboard for clients. So it removed the manual parts of it, automated that, and created a better outcome. And we also built software to automate a lot of our processes for one of the main tasks and link building thing that we did. We spent hundreds of thousands building that piece of software, but it reduced the time one of those processes took to take to about 25% of the initial time, so it paid for itself. Then years later, Google brought out Data Studio, and so it made our reporting system redundant. But by then we'd already capitalized it, we'd already got the growth, attributed it, so we moved on. That's another really important thing. Don't stick to something just because you spent loads of money on it if it's not the right thing anymore. Like, you have to sometimes just cut and move on.
I like that, what you say, because you've got to do the thing that's working well, and if it's not working well, then you need to cut it and move on. One of the final questions I have for you, Richard, is about SEO trends and where is it heading. We did talk about that a little bit, but where do you see your industry going forward?
So I'll talk about some of the changes we're making on our own business, right?
Because you're going through a lot of changes, especially with your branding as well.
Massive changes, massive changes, because AI is going to change everything, and we don't want to become like a Blockbuster Video or a Kodak and become irrelevant. And so we front-footed that, and we've always led the industry in New Zealand. So I obviously got Brittany. I interviewed lots of CEOs in the UK and the US of top agencies and formulated a strategy. But ultimately, it used to be that everyone went to Google. And, if you were ranking really well on Google, then you got business. It's a little bit more fragmented nowadays. And so it's not necessarily all about Google or about social. It might be language models. It might be Reddit. And so what we're doing is, what does the client want to achieve? Be totally platform agnostic and really dialing into what their outcomes are, where their target market is, and speak to their target market when they want to be spoken to, how they want to be spoken to, and where they want to be spoken to. So it might be hyper-local targeting at a conference. We might send messages to a conference, then retarget elsewhere. So you can actually geofence locations, and people get advertising on their mobile phone, display advertising, because they're in that location. People don't necessarily know that, but then you capture the data and then you can retarget them with other information.
I'm not really using Google search. I'm using ChatGPT most of the time.
Yeah.
And I just find it tedious to go on Google nowadays because I have to go and do the work, whereas this super intelligent model is doing it all for me. So the whole Google ranking and things like that, is that really going to matter in a few days, a few months, a few years?
So there's different types of queries that are being dealt with by Google, a typical Google search and a typical kind of AI search. They're very different, but in my mind, you can kind of see the future of AI search, and it will make typical Google search look old-fashioned. But in the US, you have AI overviews, which is integrated into Google search. So it's at the top. And that should be coming out December, January in New Zealand, I think later in Australia. And so I kind of see that as an interim step. But we're already optimizing for large language models for clients. And we're looking at the US and seeing what proportion of search volume they're getting. And so we're staying ahead of the game in that respect. No one can predict what's going to happen, but I believe you're going to have your own front end with your own trained agents behind it. So you might have a shopping bot that knows your style, knows your sizes, and you might say to it, I'm looking for this, and it will find you and draw a comparison table. And so how do you get advertising in that? It's going to be interesting. Or do you have to optimize for brands? So that the way that we move and the way we've set up our business now is to be able to evolve as the market and as the way of customer capture evolves. And if it was still pure SEO, we might be irrelevant in a few years. And so that's one of the reasons we've moved and invested a lot of money in understanding where the market is going and what we need to do.
So much to cover in such little time, but I just want to say thank you for making time to chat to me, Richard. It's been awesome.
Cool, thanks for having me.
We need a part 2, but for now, I would love to know one more question. If you had a notes in your office or a diary, business diary, what's on your agenda right now, or what is it saying? Is there like a piece of wisdom that you've written down or like lessons learned?
So I do have notes on my phone because I'm always thinking of things, and I always have to make notes, but I'm focusing on evolving our brand at the moment. And so I thought about evolving the product, which I've done, and I got an unusual mind. So I spent several months just for hours at night, just imagining all the different interactions, like visualizing it in my head, and I just planned that out for months. And then it's trying to get people to implement that vision, which is hard. But my notes have generally got ideas, and I'll share those ideas with a couple of trusted people, and probably 80-90% of them will be shit, but there might be one or two pieces of gold in there. And so I write these things down as I think about them, and I let them kind of percolate, and then decide which ones I'm going to do. And but I'm always coming up with ideas, and always making notes. And some of them seem amazing at first, but then on reflection, you think, it's probably not that good. So.
And if people want to reach out to you and find out more about what you do and your business and get in touch, where can they go? Yeah,
I'm on LinkedIn, Richard Conway, or richard@pureseo.com. I'm totally relaxed, It's, it's been fun.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Cheers.